was terrified and immediately closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. Soon enough, I fell asleep again. Then I woke up and it never happened again. To this day, I still get creeped out by silence. The Grinning Man. I found myself at home one weekend night. My parents were out of town, and I was returning home from a canceled sleepover at a friend's house. The lights were on when I got in the door, and I remember getting a phone call from the same friend shortly after, which would end up being the last normal event of that night. My brother was playing video games in the next room, and I could hear him tapping furiously at a video game while I spoke on the cordless phone. I walked around in the living room and ended the phone call in the kitchen when I remember hearing some kind of high-pitched squeal that came from the house somewhere, and I couldn't place where it was coming from. It sounded like it was in every room that I went to investigate. It ended after about a minute and was interrupted by the phone ringing, but the phone was not in the kitchen where I left it. It was in the bathroom on the counter in front of the sink. I answered the phone and there was no one there, so I hung up. It was at that point where I heard a dragging sound, like a large heavy object was being dragged in the attic crawl space above me. I followed the sound as it slowly navigated from room to room and ended up in my parents' bedroom. They still had a waterbed at the time. After the sound made it to the far wall, it stopped and the phone rang again. This time my friend was on the other end of it. I told him what was going on, and he told me to be careful and call the police. After I got off the phone, I laid down on the waterbed and was horrified to find a body-shaped, solid object inside the waterbed mattress, and I leaped out of it. Then I heard a knock at the door and answered it quickly, but there was nobody there. It was at this point that my brother called me from his room to just check something out that he had discovered in the game he was playing. And a little more than annoyed at his lack of interest in what was going on, I stormed into his room angrily. There was nobody there. His bed was made, and the room was spotless, but it was empty. Neither the console or the TV was on, and the controller was wrapped neatly and unplugged. There was no way he could have hid and cleaned his room in the few seconds it took me to make it from the front door to his bedroom. I had been alone the entire night, hearing for 20 straight minutes my brother playing a game that he was not even playing, that he wasn't even present to be playing. The phone rang again, but again it was not where I had left it. This time it was resting on the kitchen counter where I originally had left for some reason, and he was calling me back. I explained what had just happened, and there was another knock at the door. Since I was standing right next to it, I peeked out the window. Within 2 seconds of the knocks, there was nobody there. At this point, I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch to make sure I didn't see anyone running away, as I had a large, wide-open yard, and there wasn't anything to hide behind. I walked into the yard to look around, but didn't find anything or anybody. I found myself engaged in several more minutes of talking before my friend got off the line, and it was at that moment where I realized that the place I had been staring off into space while talking were 2 very large black reflective eyes looking back at me. The figure was tall and lanky and stood only 10 feet or so from me in the shadowy cast by the garage from the front door light. The most notable feature he wore was an inhumanly large smile, and he was grinning with oily, metallic teeth, literally from ear to ear. Despite me staring directly at him for more than 5 minutes, I pretended I didn't notice him, and through sheer willpower alone, made it inside the house without running or walking fast. Instead, I walked calmly. I remember feeling like if I ran, he would chase me, and somehow knew that he would have caught me easily. I barricaded myself in my bedroom the rest of the night and did not fall asleep until the sun came up the next morning and my parents were home. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before, and nothing like that has ever